Elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray, London-born scholar and poet, educated at Eton and Cambridge, lived a quiet life at Cambridge and wrote several odes in the Pindaric style. Apart from his elegy written in a country churchyard, which is one of the best known poems in the English language, his poems include odes such as The Progress of Poesy and The Bard, and poems on Celtic and Icelandic themes. Like Thomson, Gray's poetry was concerned with the world of nature. Gray's elegy written in a country churchyard is unique in itself, for it does not, on the face of it, mourn the death of an individual as Milton's Lycidas does. His total output was not large, but his work in its sensitivity, melancholy, and feeling for both the common man and nature stands out from the rather artificial poetry characteristic of the 18th century. As I've already mentioned, that Gray's elegy belongs to the landscape school of poetry and has a dominant pastoral element. But it also follows the traditions of elegiac writing and incorporates philosophic reflections on human mortality. This elegy, as it is called, is really a reflective poem in a plaintive mood and not a lament over a dead person. It is perhaps the most widely known poem in the English language. It expresses perfectly what most people often felt, and it does so in language so inevitable that we flatter ourselves that we could have expressed ourselves exactly thus. The moral note that characterizes it also appeals to the common reader. There is little in the poem to surprise or excite our wonder. There is much to touch our hearts. It further commemorates not the great and the successful, but humble folk who would otherwise have no memorial. Seeing the mouldering heaps of nameless graves in the churchyard, the poet Thomas Gray speculates on how much potential greatness that never had a chance to prove itself may there lie buried. The elegy was not composed at one sitting. Probably no great poem ever was. It was begun at Stoke Poges in 1742 and was completed in 1750 before it was published in 1751. So in all, the poem took 8 years with long interruptions. Two events are said to have influenced the writing of the poem. The first being the death of his friend Richard West in 1742, and the second, the trial and execution of the rebel lords in 1745. From the point of view of poetic technique, the poem is excellent and was well received by Gray's contemporaries, and it has retained its popularity ever since. It focuses on the ordinary village people who lie buried in the country churchyard and whose humble graves are contrasted with the tombs in the cathedral and the lives of those who have won fame and honor. It is rich in sound effects and in poetic imagery and is laced with literary allusions. The village of Stoke Poges lay deeply secluded in the Buckinghamshire countryside in the 18th century. The rich landscape of the Thames Valley, its uh, elm-shaded meadows, spreading beechwoods and high-ranked winding lanes made the scenic beauty of Gray's contemplative walks and meditative moods. There also stood a chapel of red tile or brick. This chapel served as a place of burial and also for devotion. The untidy turf of the churchyard was shaded by ancient elms and yews. Gray associated himself with these tranquil scenes. It was the landscape he had painted in the Ode on the Spring. The heavy foliage oaks, the noble beechwoods, the butterflies dancing in the hot sunshine, the cattle drowsing in the shade. His eyes watched the ripening of the hay, the gradual changes in the cornfields from green to pale. His thoughts turned to the men who labored in those fields and woods, whose existence depended on them, and who would remain buried and forgotten under the churchyard turf when their life's work was done and they died. He concerned himself with the life of the people of Stoke Porges, the men working from dawn to dusk, whose lot was poverty and toil, the usual hardships of life, a little domestic happiness, and then oblivion. The meter of the poem is iambic pentameter, and in Gray's hands, the measure became an instrument of infinite variety and beauty, as if, says one of his biographers, and I quote, a craftsman by the mere touch of his fingers should turn ochre into gold. I'll stop here and we'll do a detailed study of the poem in the next lecture.